Well, welcome everybody to this month's community challenge recap. For those of you who have never participated or seen one of these monthly challenges, each month within the eLearning designers community, we host a design challenge of some sort. And it's opportunity for folks to put their skills into practice and do and create things that they wouldn't normally create. So welcome everybody. If you happen to be watching this recording on YouTube, make sure to click that like, subscribe, and bell button so you can get alerted the next time I publish a video on YouTube. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into sharing my screen and we'll take a look at all the submissions for this month's challenge, which was on the topic of creating an infographic to explain a graphic design concept. So putting into practice explaining a graphic design concept while also practicing graphic design. I thought it was a good fit. And then creating infographic, which is mostly a graphic design task, in my opinion. So let me jump into sharing my screen and we will check out all of the submissions for this month. All right, so here we are in the community. So as I mentioned a moment ago, this month's challenge was all on the topic of creating an infographic to explain a graphic design concept. And one of the things that, for anyone who's new to e-learning or instructional design, or even if you've been working in this industry for years, one of the things that I find that most people struggle with is the graphic design aspects of our job. Nobody really prepares you to be a visual designer or a graphic designer. And so I thought what would be fun is to challenge folks to learn about a graphic design concept and then teach it back in a way that challenged them to put their graphic design skills into practice. And I have to tell you, for a hot minute, I was a little concerned because as of just the other day, we only had 1 or 2 submissions, but everybody kind of came out of the woodwork at the last minute, and we ended up with a whole bunch of really, really awesome submissions for this month. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at them one by one, and then I'll show you how I chose to tackle this month's challenge, which I found to be more challenging than I was anticipating. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. All right. And if you happen to be watching this recording, I'll put links down in the description for where you can find this challenge and all of our challenges. All right. So our first submission came from, let's find it here. Our first submission came from Kayla, and Kayla created an infographic. I'll open it up here in a new tab here. Oh, it downloaded. That's fine. So she wanted to focus on 3 things at a high and quick level, and she created this infographic using Figma. I've seen more people using Figma lately, and I've been certainly impressed by it. I've never played with it before, but I think it's like Adobe XD for creating prototypes, and I think it's a little bit like Adobe Illustrator as well. It's an online tool. So Kayla's infographic was all on the topic of color, typography, and accessibility. Let's do this. Let's see if I can just open it in a new tab. Open image in new tab, right? It just keeps downloading. That's fine. We'll just open up the downloaded version. All right, so let's take a look here. So color, typography, accessibility, color and font are some of the most essential and visible elements of a brand's identity. I totally agree. A lot of people did theirs on color, and it was quite interesting. She talks a little bit about the emotions of different colors. This is very true. I do this workshop on graphic design for e-learning, and one of the things that we talk about when we're talking about color is how you'll notice that a lot of fast food restaurants use red and yellow in their colors, and because red tends to invoke urgency in people, and yellow tends to invoke hunger. So urgent hunger, fast food, I don't know, there might be a connection there. So she talks about the different emotions. I love that. Talking about color theory, monochromatic, triadic. I can never say this word. Analogous. I don't know if that's right. Complementary colors. I like this. This can be really hard creating color schemes. So looking at some guidance like this is very, very helpful, especially when it comes to background colors. All right, she talks a little bit about fonts, serif and sans fonts. I think somebody had commented about how they've always struggled with identifying serif and sans serif fonts. And it just comes down to these little doohickeys up here. I like this. This is a simple explanation. All right, and I think we have another infographic about mixing and matching these different types of fonts. Oh, and we have it right here. Okay, good. We have another one too. She talks about H1, H2, H3, so different types of headings. I love this. And then accessibility. I feel like I'm guilty of this, not always thinking about accessibility first or early on in my design, but it's becoming more and more important that when we talk about colors or fonts, we talk about accessibility. So I love that Kayla included some information about the use of contrast and also fonts. People who are dyslexic, there's dyslexic friendly fonts out there. So, and there's some online tools. If anyone knows about these tools in chat, feel free to put them in there. But there is one. There's a contrast checker online that I see a lot of people reference for checking for contrast or lack of contrast. All right. Thank you so much, Kayla. Awesome infographic. All right. So let's continue on. Our next submission came from Michaela, and Michaela did her infographic on design principles, and she used Canva for her infographic. I believe Canva has a whole infographic library. I've never used Canva for that before, but I know a lot of people have. What I like about, I already forgot, Michaela, sorry. What I like about Michaela's infographic is are the simple colors, and I also really like the simple graphics here. So we start at the top, design principles. So we have 3 columns here. What the concept is, yes and no. So size and scale. Larger design elements will appear more prominently, especially when compared to smaller ones. Yes, that totally makes sense, right? So we see the bigger T-Rex versus the littler T-Rex. Color and contrast. Brighter elements, as well as elements with higher contrast to surrounding elements or backgrounds, will appear more prominent in a design. I like that. Your eye immediately goes to this. That's a great way to bring your learner's attention to something in a subconscious way. I use this frequently when I'm doing like user interface design in my courses, right? You make something animate, or you change the color, or you do something, it will immediately draw the attention of your audience. Typography and hierarchy. Size and weight of the font draw attention to more important elements. Yep, this is a great example, right? We'll look at the name first, kind of plays into the color and contrast. Versus all this text looks exactly the same. I see this frequently missed, this concept in resumes, right? I'm reviewing resumes all the time in the community, and one of the things I think a lot of people could really benefit from is using some really good hierarchy and typography and that contrast to help, potential hiring managers visually navigate, say, a resume or even a portfolio, right? Proximity. Objects that are closer to each other appear to be grouped. What I like about this is a great example of visual communication. Same thing with kind of the size and scale up here. But there's, when you look at these 2 graphics, there's subtle meaning, right? Like you look at this and I'm like, oh, there's a group of friends. And I look at this and for whatever reason, this person's an outcast, right? They're separate from the rest of the group. So that's a great example of visual communications, which I really like. All right, spacing. White space emphasizes an element to its position. Or element in its composition. Yep, I totally agree. This one looks like they're floating in the space. This one looks like they're, floating next to some ball. I like that. And then rule of thirds, dividing an image into thirds and then placing important elements where those invisible lines intersect will give them more prominence in the design. Yes, I love this. I do photography on the side as a hobby, and so the rule of thirds is super important in photography, but also when you're laying out a slide or something like that. All right. Thank you so much, Michaela. Love this infographic. Very, very simple and a good use of graphic design in creating it. Thank you. All right. So our next one comes from Kelsey. Now, this one's interesting. I really love what happened here with Kelsey. So I'm going to show Kelsey's original infographic that she shared, and then I'm going to show this updated one. So originally, Kelsey shared this one online, and the content's exactly the same between the 2. But she wasn't aware that these colors, might not be friendly for people who have color blindness, right? Especially with red colors, right? So what she ended up doing is she ended up completely redesigning it, not redesigning it, but changing the colors, I should say, to this green one so that it's a bit more legible for folks. And so I love how she, in the process of creating this, learned something new. Okay, so this one is on the topic of typography and amateurs. Quick overview of the style of text for the unknown and forgetful. I love that title. All right, so types of fonts, again, talking about serif fonts and sans serif fonts. I love how she provides an explanation about these. So sans is French for without. So without the serif for sans serif. And I like also she provides examples of where it's used. So serif fonts are typically used in print, whereas sans serifs tend to be more online, digital. I like that. She also talks about display fonts or unique and fancy stylized fonts, right? Like handwritten fonts or fonts with weird styles or fonts like this. Decorative or extremely stylized fonts used most often as a title or header to provide emphasis. I love that tip. You never really want to use these for like body text because they can be hard to read. But my favorite example of like handwritten fonts, I'm sure we've all seen this. You get a letter in the mail from a credit card company or some sort of spammy mail, and they'll have on there like a handwritten font to make it feel like somebody actually wrote, to you, and with an arrow, or they highlight it. I remember when I first saw that years and years and years ago, I remember like actually looking at each character to see if it was really handwritten. Now they have actual machines where it actually does handwriting on paper, and it can actually mimic your own handwriting, which is kind of crazy. Okay, combining fonts. So 1 or 2 fonts per project. When using 2, find complementing opposites. That's a great tip. I totally agree with this. If you're going to use serif as a heading, use the sans serif for your body. If you're going to use tall for a heading, use short, bold, regular. I love that tip. And I think the most important thing when combining fonts is you have to be consistent with it throughout your entire project. And 2 fonts for most people is enough. I like that. Maybe a 3rd font for, emphasis, but I like this tip. All right, customization. Many programs allow you to customize a font. I totally agree. Programs like Word and Microsoft or PowerPoint allow this. So I don't know if it's ever letting or leading. I think it's leading. Line spacing, either way. This is how much space is in between each line. So make sure there's enough leading or letting. So lines are easy to read. Unlike this, do as I say, not as I do. Tracking, letter spacing. So this is spacing between each character, I believe. So good for artistic alignment effects. So you get a little bit more of a wider spacing between each character. Kerning, specific space between characters. Now, I always struggle with understanding the difference between these two. So this is between characters, letters. Yeah, I always get confused between these two. But bad kerning is when it's inconsistent. I like this. And then hierarchy. Talked about that, right? Font versus, or bold versus, thin. Draws the audience's eye through your content. All right, I love this one, and I love how you learned a little bit about something about accessibility. So thank you so much, Kelsey, for this infographic on typography. And it's a good use of typography. I will also say that. I like that. All right, our next one comes from Shellie. Shellie did hers on, I'm going to open it up here. Shellie's infographic is on visual design for accessibility. Great topic. Let me figure out how to zoom in here. All right, so she talks about text and color contrast. So let's start with text. So choose easy to read fonts that distinguish between similar characters, like one I, or I assume that's an L. That's a great tip. I don't think about that often. Color and contrast. The contrast ratio should be 3 to 4.5 and 1 between text and background. Again, there's online tools that can help you do that. So definitely consider checking those out. Make headings distinguishable and hierarchical. Can never say that word. Avoid eye strain by not having too much contrast. Stark black and white can cause eye fatigue. I like that. Make font size big enough to offer font sizing options. I like that. And leave some empty space. Too busy is too much. There's a great infographic here later on white space that I really like. Line length depends on font, but between 45 and 77 characters is usually good. Use palette builder to check color contrast. That might be that tool. Oh, there's a link here. Let's check that out. I like this. So this helps you build accessible color palettes. I like that. See what happens when I click on this. Okay, so you get some different tools that you can put in here. I'm going to put in a random thing here. See what happens. Okay, so it shows you different ways that you can layer that text. That's very cool. That is Palette Builder. Thanks for sharing that. All right, and then for more typography, go to type. Let's open this up. And for color contrast, let's open that up. I don't know what these links takes us to. All right, so good information on accessibility for teams. Can you easily read and comprehend textual information on a page? I like that. And then some information on color and contrast. Very good. I love this. I love that you embedded resources into your, I'm seeing if I missed any other ones, into your infographic. All right. Thank you so much, Shellie. Okay, continuing on. This one was from Elaine. Elaine, she shared a business card, even though it's technically not an infographic. What I do like about it, what I appreciate, is that it utilizes different techniques that you would use in an infographic. So she has her little rideshare business card here. And it was done in PowerPoint. Very good. I love that. Thank you, Elaine. All right, this was, I have to tell you, it's one of my favorites because I like puns. So this is Jaclyn's really crappy infographic on crap design. It's not really crappy, but you know what I mean. It uses a lot of crap, you know, and she's talking about a lot of different crap in it. Okay, let's see if I can zoom in here. All right, so pay attention to this crap so your graphic design projects don't stink. I love that. So hers is an acronym for content, repetition, alignment, and proximity. And we have some interesting graphics here to go with it. So contrast, make sure your design can be easily seen and read easily. I like that. Repetition, try a color palette to keep your designs consistent. Alignment, organize categories of text to show importance. A simple example here. And proximity, create relationships and connectedness between objects. I like that. It's such a crappy design, and I love this crap. So thank you so much for sharing. It's such a simple infographic, but you know, it makes me laugh. I giggle at this one. Thank you so much for sharing it, Jaclyn. It was very crappy. All right, continuing on. Our next one comes from Janette. Janette's infographic is on selecting images here, and hers are talking about photos, illustrations, icons. So 3 tips here. And we have for photos, if time, take your own photos, use stock images, be sure they're high resolution. Roster, made of pixels, will pixelate if enlarged too much. I knew that. I knew conceptually what it meant, but I didn't realize that. Does that mean it's made of pixels? I don't know. Or is it raster? I don't know. Vector, rendered using geometry, can easily be enlarged. Yes, I love that. Illustrations, if time, make your own. Next one, be sure the illustration clearly supports the text. Avoid overloading with content. Remember composition rules and the fundamentals of design. I like that. And then logos and icons. If time, make your own. Keep it simple. Be sure icon fits purpose meaning. All right, very simple. Think to yourself, will this image have an impact on learning? And she created this with, I can never say this name, Venage, Vengage, I think it is. I have no idea. But that's another infographic tool that's out there that you can use. So I like this one. Simple, simple, simple. Very good. Okay, thank you, Janette. All right, our next one comes from Amy. I'm just reading through here. So she's had several conversations with folks looking to get into IED, which made this topic relevant in recent events. Decided to tackle visual communication for non-design folks. I like this. Visual communications is a great topic. It's a great topic that's related to graphic design, but a totally different concept. Visual communications, I always tell people, graphic design is how things look and feel, like the fonts, the colors, the layout. Visual communications is the meaning behind the graphics or images that you use. So I'm going to open this up. Give me 1 second here. And I love the cool colors, another monochromatic design, so colors of the same shade. Okay, so communication and design. So visual versus written, right? Written is obviously text. Visual is more graphics, icons, illustrations, animations. So visual design allows learners to connect with the message quickly and at a deeper level. Using effective visual design principles in e-learning helps learners remember content, relate to message, follow complex process, and understand the message clearly. Visual design in e-learning, simple and appealing, readable fonts with intention, graphics related to learning and message, consistent look and feel, clear steps and process, and use of white space effectively. Yeah, I like this. It's all about intention, right? And like why you're using a graphic. It's not just for decoration. It is for meaning, right? Okay, so universal does not require shared language. So what she's talking about here are graphics and icons that have universal meaning even across languages and cultures, right? Things like arrows or icons like this, right? We know what a lot of these icons mean, right? I like that. Faster. Human process information visually first, language second. So here we have a poodle, has a medium-sized frame with a long head and muzzle, oval eyes, close, da, 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 da. Okay, so this is the written communication. Here's the visual. I like that, right? So we have some graphics to help illustrate that. All right, deeper meaning, emotion, context, outcome, intent. 3 boys are on the playground. One is sitting down and the other 2 are pointing at them, right? We can look at that and assume some sort of meaning from it, right? And even if we look at the parent here, what is the parent doing here versus here? It doesn't say anything, but we can infer some sort of meaning from these graphics, right? And when you pair that with, you know, content, audio narration or something like that, then it really helps your learners. What I always say about visual communications is helps your learners see literally what you're trying to say. All right. I like this one. Thank you so much, Amy. All right. Very good. Okay, so continuing on. So this one's from Curtis. This one is also on visual communications. And I really like the way, I'm going to open this up. I really like the way Curtis defined different types of visual communications. And he calls them instructional graphics, which I also like. Because I haven't thought about this before. I've always struggled with how do you explain the different types of visual communications you might use, right? So he starts with decorative, very simple stuff, right? Used to add aesthetic appeal, humor, or create a visual tone, right? So that's kind of more like what you're doing, creating and adding graphics or visuals, colors, icons, font for decorative purposes or graphic design purposes, right? There may not be, you know, a meaning behind it. Representational, used to depict real objects of concepts in a realistic manner, right? So he shows here like a plane taking off. It's not a literal representation, but it's enough for somebody to understand the concept. I like that. Organizational, used to show structure or relationships between content. So, you know, think of like a diagram or a flow chart as a graphic. I like that. Relational, used to show quantitative relationships between 2 or more variables, right? So you think of a graphic, a bar chart, something like that, to show the relationship between information. Transformational, used to show action or changes in objects over time as a series of frames, right? Think of animation. Animation is a series, example of transformational instructional graphics. So you see something move. That's a great example of that. And then interpretive, used to illustrate abstract concepts, principles, cause and effect relationship. So we see some clouds here and, you know, a thermometer. What I like about this interpretive one, I use this all the time in e-learning. I think about a course I once worked on it was steel reinforced concrete, a really riveting topic. But we had to explain how when you reinforce concrete with steel, it increases the tensile strength and the compression strength of concrete. And when you don't have that, concrete is more fragile and brittle. And so I created a series of graphics. I wish I had it with me right now. This series of animations using basic shapes in PowerPoint where it shows, you know, a gray bar to represent concrete, and then we put some, you know, rods in it or lines that looked like steel and showed how it increased that strength, right? And it was a great interpretive and transformational and representational graphic. All right, thank you so much, Curtis. I love this one. Very simple, but really great information in there. Okay. This one comes from Craig. This one I really like because it's so simple. I probably took Craig 2 seconds to create. His is on white space is significant. So I like that. I have a good laugh with that one. White space is important because, you know, if there's anything I know to be true is one of the things a lot of new designers struggle with is getting comfortable with white space. You don't have to fill up every part of your slide or your graphic with something. White space is significant. It gives a really good breathing room. All right. Thank you, Craig. Okay. So this one comes from Brianna on color theory. I'm going to open up this one. I like this one. It's very colorful. Zoom in here. All right. Color theory, understanding the basics. So colors are organized into 3 categories. Primary, we know that. Secondary, I can't say words. The third one, we'll say that. And then you can arrange them on a color wheel. People decide whether or not they like a product in 90 seconds. 90% of that decision is based solely on color. That is fascinating. Okay, know that each color has meaning. We talked a little bit about this earlier, right? Different colors have different emotions. Same thing with fonts. Nobody talked about that. Fonts have different emotions as well, or a list of different emotions. The colors you choose make a huge difference. There are 2 models of mixing colors. This one I did not know about. I knew, RGB are 3 colors, the red, green, and blue, and you mix those. What I didn't know about CMYK was that it's actually about subtracting colors. So RGB is about mixing colors, adding colors in to create new colors. CMYK is subtractive color mixing model. That's fascinating. I had no idea. Very good. All right, warm colors, blue, cool colors. We know about that. We talked about different hues. So pure colors, you can add black to make something darker, add white to make it lighter, add gray or black to have different tones. So we have shades and tints and tones. Don't know what colors to use? Try these color schemes. So we have complementary. Can't say that word again. Triadic. I like this. And you know what I always recommend? I don't think it's mentioned in here, but go use the tool. There's a lot of online tools to help you create color schemes. I'm awful at creating color schemes. Very good. Thank you, Brianna. I love this one. Okay, continuing on. This one, typography for beginners. That was a popular topic. I love the design of this one just because it's something about these colors. I don't know why I'm digging them. Okay, so typography for beginners. I also really like all the little texture in here, right? It's a lot, but it doesn't overwhelm it, which you would think, adding this texture and the gradients would be overwhelming, but it's not. So art of arranging text in a visually appealing way, style and appearance should add to brand or advertisement's overall impact. So we talked about fonts again, serif, sans serif. We know what those are now. Talked about display fonts, so fancy fonts versus normal fonts. Spacing, talked a little bit about that earlier. Tracking, kerning. I love all this. I still always get these 2 messed up in my mind, but they clearly are something very different. And then putting it all together. Limit your font choices. 1 to 2 is ideal. 3 is probably max, depending on the project. I agree with that. Choose a smart secondary. Think about your hierarchy. Utilize your negative space or your white space. Never stretch. Avoid bad fonts. Comic Sans, cringe. Yes, don't do Comic Sans unless you're creating something about why you shouldn't be using Comic Sans. And then readability above all. Typography is art. Yes, you never want to stylize legibility or readability for style. I agree with that. Very good. I love this one. I love the colors. It is fun. Thank you so much, Kelsey. Okay, continuing on. This one comes from Leticia. This one was fun because Leticia used her infographic to give some interesting fun facts about graphic design, some that I didn't know. So what she says at the beginning, so the human brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text, which is crazy. People spend around 6.48 seconds looking at a logo on a website. People can remember 65% of visual information 3 days later and only 10% of written content. That's fascinating. Color affects comprehension and learning by 73% and 78% respectively. The favorite color of 57% of consumers is blue. You see a lot of that with corporate colors because it, reliability, trust, security. I totally agree with that. 26% of consumers associate the color orange with sales. That's fascinating. Yes, you see that a lot. And then 76% of consumers associate the color red with speed. Remember, urgent, fast. Yellow, hunger, fast food, right? I love this one. All right, thank you, Leticia. Very good. Those are cool facts. I had no idea. There's a really great case study out there. I encourage everybody to go look it up. It was Tropicana orange juice. There was a period of time, like when you imagine the brand Tropicana, you don't even read the words. Like you can just see it and you know it in the store. And a while back, this was like over a decade ago, they decided to go to this really flat, minimalistic design. It almost looked generic. And their sales like dropped by like something crazy, like 40% within days. And it was just a matter of time. They switched back to their original branding because people didn't recognize it anymore. All right, I'll show mine in a moment. We'll do our last one here. 7 Principles of Design. This one is from Marina. New to the community, probably Marina's first challenge, I would assume. And hers is on 7 Principles of Design. Let me make this bigger. Hold on. All right. So she talks about emphasis. Determine what you want to focus the focal point to be. Find a way to make that stand out with your design, right? So you can do that with different fonts. We talked a little bit about that with earlier with color or size. There's a lot of ways you can direct your audience's or your learners' attention to things without having to say, "Hey, look there," like actually saying that. Balance and alignment. Do you want your design to be symmetrical, or does asymmetrical design work better for the message you're trying to get across? Yes. Getting used to those align and distribute tools in all the different tools we use is super, super important. Contrast. Make your design pop with color or typography. Yeah, you see a lot of this, like, I see this contrast in like dark website design or dark mode design being much more popular. Repetition. Use repetition. The use of repetition can strengthen your brand or your brand can strengthen and brand your design. Sorry about that. So we see some repetition here. Proportion. Proportion is the visual weight and size of objects and how they relate to each other, right? Another great example of how you can create hierarchy. Emphasis. Movement. Movement is the way your design flows to tell a story. Pay attention to the balance, alignment, and contrast to allow appropriate movement. I like that. And then white space. Use white space to create hierarchy and organization and create some breathing room. Very good. I like this one. Simple, simple, simple. Thank you, Marina. All right. So those are all of the submissions we got for this month. Thank you, everybody who participated. I'll show you what I chose to do. I have to tell everybody, okay, so here's my infographic. I did mine. I just decided to brand it consistent with the e-learning designers community and academy. I decided to do mine on how to select images for your next e-learning project, or any project, really. It doesn't have to be just e-learning. That's just what came to mind. I have to tell everybody, creating an infographic was a little bit more challenging than I thought it would be. And then I realized, like halfway through, I don't think I've ever actually created an infographic before. And so there's so many challenges with how you lay it out and how you make sure it's legible and not take up too much space. And you want to show the concepts you're trying to explain, but in a written format, right? It was like creating a poster, but a really long poster, right? All right, so here are my tips. So first, avoid cheesy stock photos. Select images that look like real people doing real things in real work environments. I'll zoom in here a little bit more. And I decided to use some different examples, and then I used these little emoji icons to indicate like good or bad. So, you know, if you look at these two photos here, right, like this is a modern stock photo. I feel like I've been in that meeting, right? Real people doing real things in real work environments. This doesn't look real. Nobody actually does this in real life. So don't do that, right? Select diverse images. Select images that showcases the diversity of your audience and that they can see themselves in, right? The purpose of photography when it comes to learning is hopefully you're communicating some message, but it's also important your audience can see themselves in the images that you're creating. And so that's not just about, you know, racial diversity or cultural diversity. Of course, that's important, but also people who are maybe have different levels of accessibility. Maybe somebody in a wheelchair, right? Because people exist in wheelchairs, but you rarely see that in stock photos, right? What you want to avoid is a bunch of photos with a bunch of white people or a bunch of young white people or just a bunch of young people. You want to have different ages, races, all sorts of stuff in your stock photography. And I will say stock photography's come a really long way when it comes to that. All stock photography used to look like this with weird people doing thumbs up at the camera that nobody ever actually does in real life. All right, tip number 3, avoid ambiguous images. So select images that help your learners see what you're trying to say, right? So something that has meaning to your content. Don't use these weird ambiguous images that mean nothing. These get added for decoration. Tip number 4, select high resolution images. Select images that aren't pixelated when you enlarge them, right? So high quality image, you can enlarge to a reasonable size and it'll still maintain its quality versus others that get pixelated when you enlarge them. And then avoid inconsistent images. So select consistent images that appear from the same image family, right? So these two images from the same image family, these are just like, she's experiencing some urgent hunger there. We were talking about that earlier with our colors and whatever this means. I don't know what this guy's doing there, right? Consistent images. They look consistent in style, lighting. They don't have to be from the same photo shoot. They just have to look consistent. So that was my infographic. I decided to create mine in PowerPoint. So everything in here is just simple PowerPoint graphics, shapes. This is me typing in emojis on my keyboard from my Mac. Even these graphics are just images that I did the what effect here. I did this little photo effect here to make them look like that. Simple lines, simple shapes. And so that is how I decided to build my infographic. All right, so that was this month's challenge. I'm seeing a couple of things in chat here. Can you animate images on an infographic in Venngage? And yeah, I'm not sure, but I see everyone's typing in chat. All right, so that was this month's community challenge. I want to thank everybody who decided to participate. Let me stop sharing my screen. Like I said earlier, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and bell button, and check the links down in the description below for this month's challenge, where you can check out all of these submissions. And of course, you can check out our future submission, our future challenges, and our past challenges there as well. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. And until next month's challenge, I'll see you around. Bye, everybody.